Before you go, I'd love to know where in the world are you watching this from. Drop your city or country in the comments. It warms my heart to see how far our stories travel. If this story touched you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Tomorrow, we return with another unforgettable tale, one that just might change the way you see love, trust, or even yourself. So stay close, because the next chapter is coming, and you won't want to miss it. Until then, thank you for listening and for feeling every word with me in a quiet Montana town. Far from the noise of big cities and the rush of deadlines, the evening air carried only the scent of pine trees and the faint rustle of wind brushing through open fields. It was here, in the calm halls of Ridgeway Community Hospital, that Sophie Lane, a 27-year-old nurse with soft eyes and a softer voice, began her shift. She didn't know much about the man who had just been wheeled in, only that his name was Ethan Cole, and that he had been in a terrible highway accident 2 nights ago. The papers said he was rich. The town whispered he was powerful. But when Sophie stepped into room 207 and saw him lying still, hooked up to machines, wrapped in quiet, he looked just like anyone else, vulnerable, broken, and human. Ethan wasn't awake. He hadn't moved. The doctors explained that he was stable, but in a coma. They couldn't say when, or if, he would wake up. Most of the nurses avoided the room. It was too still, too haunting, but Sophie stayed. She checked his vitals. She changed his IV bags. She made sure the folds of his blanket were smooth, his pillow fluffed just right. And when her duties were done, she sat down by the window, pulled a small book of poems from her bag, and began to read. At first her voice was quiet, uncertain, like she was reading to herself. But as the nights passed, she began to read more freely, letting the rhythm of the words fill the room. Some nights it was Neruda, others Frost or Emily Dickinson. If someone had walked in, they might have thought she was crazy, talking to a man who couldn't hear her, smiling at someone who couldn't smile back. But Sophie believed something many had forgotten, that the soul listens, even when the body sleeps. She told him about her day, about the old lady in room 104, who kept calling her sunshine, about the cat that sometimes snuck into the back alley of the hospital, meowing like it owned the place. She told him about the Montana skies and how the stars here looked like they were close enough to touch. She didn't know why she talked to him. She just did. And maybe, somewhere deep inside the silence, someone was listening, because love, as Sophie believed, didn't need a response to be real. It only needed presence. And in that small room, filled with machines and moonlight, Sophie Lane gave Ethan Cole something no one else had offered: her voice, her stories, her time in a hope so quiet it almost went unnoticed. Almost. Sophie's voice became a part of the night. Room 27 was no longer just a hospital room, it became a quiet sanctuary where poems echoed and kindness lived. But outside that room, not everyone shared her warmth. Victoria Lang, 29, was the kind of nurse who walked like she had somewhere more important to be. Her scrubs were always perfectly pressed, her hair flawless under the fluorescent lights. Victoria had heard the whispers. She's just filling in for someone richer than God. That's Ethan Cole, the tech guy from New York. And in her mind, that wasn't just interesting, it was opportunity. Victoria had spent years watching other people get ahead: nurses promoted, doctors respected, and Sophie, always adored by patients. Victoria had charm, yes, but not the kind that made people trust you. Not like Sophie. So when she noticed how often Sophie lingered in room 27, and how her voice softened as she read, how her eyes sometimes stayed too long on the man who never moved, jealousy ignited like a match in dry grass. She's acting like he's her boyfriend, Victoria scoffed one night in the break room, stirring sugar into her coffee with unnecessary force. It's creepy. Her friend, an orderly, raised a brow. Maybe she just cares. Victoria's smile was cold. Caring doesn't get you anywhere. Connections do. That night she started paying closer attention. She walked past room 200 more than once, each time glancing through the narrow window. Ethan looked the same still, pale, unreachable. But Sophie, she was glowing in a way Victoria hated. She was making that room her own. And that, Victoria decided, was a problem. The Next day, Victoria scheduled a private conversation with Grant Cole, Ethan's older brother and legal guardian. He had just arrived at the hospital, dressed in a black suit. Every inch the Wall Street executive he was. "I just thought you should know," she began, voice soft, measured, practiced. "There's a nurse spending a lot of personal time with Mr. Cole. I'm sure her intentions are good, but in his condition, we have to be careful. It's a delicate situation." Grant looked intrigued, suspicious. Exactly what she wanted. "You think this nurse might be emotionally compromised?" Victoria lowered her eyes, pretending discomfort. She reads to him, tells him personal stories. "I just think maybe someone more professional would be better suited." Within 48 hours, Sophie was reassigned. She never saw it coming. One moment, she was reading a story about a little bird that found its wings. The next, she was packing up her books, told that it was routine staff rotation and nothing personal. But it felt personal. It felt like her heart had been quietly removed from the one place it had started to feel something, and from the hallway. Watching Sophie disappear down the corridor, Victoria smiled. Room 207 now belonged to her. But what Victoria didn't know was that love, even in silence, leaves a trace. And some truths don't stay buried forever. Room 27 was quiet, but a different kind of quiet. Gone were the poems, the soft laughter, the whispered stories beneath the beeping monitors. Sophie Lane had left, and Victoria Lang had taken her place. The room still smelled of antiseptic and pine-scented floor cleaner, but it had lost something invisible. Warmth. Ethan Cole remained motionless, but inside his mind, something had shifted. He couldn't move, couldn't speak, but he felt it. The absence, something or someone was missing. The silence now felt colder, heavier. Before, it had been filled with something tender, a voice that felt like sunlight through thick glass. Now, it was just ... empty. Victoria didn't notice. Or maybe she did, but chose not to care. She walked in every day with a fresh coat of lip gloss and perfume, too strong for a hospital wing. She didn't read, she didn't sit beside him and talk about the stars or cats in the alley or old women who called nurses sunshine. Instead, she adjusted monitors with mechanical precision, clicked pens, and scrolled her phone when no one was watching. Still, when Ethan opened his eyes for the first time, it was Victoria who stood beside him. The hospital lights were dim that morning, filtered by thick clouds and early rain. Ethan's eyelids fluttered once. Then again, machines beeped faster. Victoria gasped, startled, unprepared. "Oh my God," she whispered, smoothing her hair quickly. "You're awake." Ethan blinked, his gaze unfocused. He tried to speak, but all he managed was a dry rasp. "You've been in a coma," she said quickly, leaning closer, her voice soft and sugary. "I've been here every day, watching over you. You're safe now. You're okay." Her hand found his. "I'm Victoria, nurse," she continued. I never left your side." Ethan's brows furrowed. Something didn't sit right. The name, the voice, it didn't match. In the depths of his mind, a sound echoed, soft, familiar, soothing. Not her, someone else. But before he could process it, exhaustion pulled him back under. Word spread fast. Ethan Cole was awake. By the next day, reporters camped outside the hospital. Grant Cole arrived in a private SUV and ordered tighter security. Victoria, now dubbed the angel nurse by curious staff, basked in the attention. She stayed close to Ethan's bedside, telling him about all the nights she read him poetry, and all the times she held his hand through the storm. He listened, silent, nodding when she expected it, smiling when prompted, but deep down, confusion clung to his chest like a fog that wouldn't lift. He couldn't remember much, but he remembered a voice, not loud, not proud, just ... kind, and it wasn't hers. As Victoria sat beside him, recounting another made-up story, Ethan stared out the window. He didn't know who he was missing, but somewhere in the haze of his broken memory, he knew something was wrong. Someone was missing, and his heart, though wounded and quiet, was beginning to ask why. Ethan Cole had been awake for nearly a week, but his world still felt foggy. Everyone told him he was lucky to be alive. The doctors, the media, his brother Grant, they all reminded him of how far he'd come. And yet, every night, When the hospital lights dimmed and silence filled the room, he felt a strange ache, not in his body but in his memory. Victoria Lang was always there, smiling, attentive, perfect. She told him stories of how she'd sat by his side through the darkest nights, how she'd read him poetry to soothe his spirit. But whenever Ethan tried to remember her voice in those long, unconscious days, he heard someone else, a softer voice, slower, steady, like a page turning in a quiet room. It didn't make sense. Nothing made sense. That's when Monica Blake, his longtime personal assistant, quietly stepped in. Monica had worked with Ethan for over a decade. She knew his tone, his instincts, and his silences. And she didn't trust Victoria, not entirely. There was something too polished about her story, too rehearsed. Monica had seen her type before. She wasn't going to jump to conclusions, but she had a feeling, so she started digging through subtle conversations with the night staff, quiet checks on the security logs, and old duty rosters. Monica traced back to the time Ethan was still in his coma long before he opened his eyes. That's when a different name kept appearing. Sophie Lane. Sophie had been his assigned nurse for weeks before she was mysteriously rotated out. No official incident, no paperwork, just removed. Monica's curiosity deepened into suspicion. She contacted hospital administration, using her position to request internal footage and access to old files. It took time, effort, and a little pressure, but eventually, she found what she was looking for in a quiet hotel room. Monica played back the footage from Ethan's room, taken during the coma weeks. What she saw shook her. It wasn't Victoria reading to Ethan, it wasn't Victoria holding his hand at night or carefully fluffing his pillows or whispering hopeful things into the quiet. It was Sophie. In one clip, Sophie sat beside Ethan, reading from a worn poetry book, her voice calm and warm. In another, she wiped sweat from his brow during a fever, gently speaking to him, as if he could still hear her. And in the corner of a frame, Monica spotted something small. A leather-bound journal Sophie had kept by his bedside. The final confirmation came from a single clip. Late at night, Victoria entered the room after Sophie's reassignment. She picked up the journal, opened it, and began copying a few lines into her own notebook. Then, she began rehearsing out loud. Monica froze the screen. Her heart pounded. The lies, the stolen words, the impersonation. This wasn't care. This was theft. And Ethan, he deserved the truth. Not just because of what was taken from him, but because deep down, his heart already remembered the voice that saved him. It was time he remembered her name, Sophie. The next morning, Monica Blake didn't waste time. She arrived at the hospital early, holding the flash drive like it was a loaded gun. Inside were hours of security footage, proof that Sophie Lane, not Victoria Lang, had been the one by Ethan's side. Proof of the stolen journal entries, the rehearsed lies, and the woman who was quietly erased. Ethan was sitting upright when she entered his room, looking stronger but still confused. His memory hadn't fully returned, but the ache in his chest had only grown deeper. A part of him felt hollow, like something was calling from far away. "Monica," he said, surprised. "You're here early." She nodded and sat beside him. "I need to show you something." The room fell quiet as Monica opened her laptop and played the videos one by one. Sophie reading to him softly at night. Sophie adjusting his blanket, brushing his hair back from his forehead. Sophie whispering things he couldn't quite hear, but somehow already knew. Then, Victoria sneaking in, flipping through the journal, scribbling notes, practicing what wasn't hers to say. Ethan stared at the screen, his jaw clenched. Each clip unlocked something: images, feelings, fragments of memory. And then came the voice. That voice, the one he heard in his dreams, the one that had pulled him out of the darkness. It wasn't Victoria's, it was hers, Sophie's. "She was here the whole time," he murmured, barely breathing. "She's the one." Monica nodded, her eyes sharp but gentle. "Her name is Sophie Lane. She was reassigned without reason, probably pressured by your brother." "And Victoria?" Ethan didn't say a word. He just stood, pulled the 4 from his arm, and started changing into his clothes. "You're not ready to leave yet," Monica warned. "I'm not staying," Ethan said, his voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "I need to find her." The rain was falling hard when Ethan stepped out of the car in front of Westbrook County Clinic, miles away from the city, soaked within seconds. But he didn't care. Inside at the nurse's station, Sophie sat finishing charts, her tired eyes focused on the page until she saw him. She froze. "Ethan," she whispered, rising slowly, the pen slipping from her hand. He didn't speak. He reached into his coat and pulled out something wrapped in plastic, her old journal. Edges worn, pages weathered, but still full of truth. "I remember your voice," he said, stepping closer. "I remember the stars you talked about, the stories you told, the way you believed in me, when I couldn't even hear you." Sophie's eyes filled with tears. "You weren't supposed to know. I had to know," he said, "because without you, I wouldn't have come back." He took her hand, rain dripping from his sleeves, his heart pounding in his chest. "I don't care about the lies anymore. I only care about the truth. And the truth is, I came back for you." And right there, in the middle of the storm, the girl who gave her heart in silence finally heard the words she'd waited for all along. If this story touched your heart the way it touched ours, we'd love to hear from you. What part of Sophie and Ethan's journey moved you the most? Was it the quiet nights filled with hope, the heartbreaking betrayal, or the powerful moment of truth in the rain? Tell us in the comments below, and while you're at it, let us know where you're watching from. Where building a global community of people who believe in love, redemption, and second chances. Whether you're in the heart of New York City, a small town in Texas, or watching late at night from somewhere halfway across the world, your presence here means something. Stories like these remind us that even in silence, love speaks, that even after betrayal, truth finds a way. So share your thoughts. Did Sophie do the right thing? Did Ethan wait too long? And what would you have done if you were in their shoes? We read every comment, and your words inspire us to keep creating. Don't forget to subscribe and come back tomorrow for another unforgettable story that may just speak to your soul.